Hey there, I'm Tricia Morris at Club Scrap, and today's project is the Hooray card kit, and I could not be more excited about showing you how to make this awesome little card caddy and the 12 cards that go inside of it. After busting my brain for a fair amount of time, I actually found a way to make everything for this out of just 11 sheets of 12 by 12 paper and the rest of the contents of that Hooray card kit. So in the kit, you're gonna find the die cuts for that actual project. We got the wooden button feet, and here are the 12 envelopes that you need, and a foam brush here to help us with the glue application you will need, a bottle of our bookbinding glue to complete this. Otherwise, you're gonna have to maybe substitute with another type of glue you might have on hand. But if you have the bookbinding glue, that's gonna be the best. We also have some little brads here and the label holders. But before we can get to any of that, we need to do our paper trimming and sorting. So I'm gonna grab my instructions and let's get this paper in the order we need it. We'll set those ribbons aside too. All of that can go away for now. And I'm also gonna grab my accordion pocket file and put it underneath my trimmer base so that I can sort all of the pieces into one of 4 pockets. A, B, C, D will hold the extras, and then we'll even keep a pile for our project. And all of those piles are labeled. Each piece of paper we'll trim is labeled in your instructions, but I'll just walk you through all of it, so not to worry. Let's, from our stash of paper, I'd like to hold it up vertically and so I can see what I'm looking at here. Let's find one green, some really nice, fun highlighter colors here, one yellow, and then there is one sheet of white. There are not 2, but 1, and then 1 blue. So that'll be the first batch of 4 pieces cut the same way. Then we're gonna move on to one more of the green, another yellow, then a blue, and both of the fun prints. See the balloon print? We're gonna do both of those. I'm gonna put that face down, and then 2 black, and then the 2 Cutaparts. I think we'll trim the one that has the black segments on the edge first, and then finally the one that has the little labels on this edge. We'll put all those face down, and then flip everything back over so green is on top. And let's get figuring out all of our trimming and get our grain direction determined here. So we want to make sure when we place this in the trimmer that the grain is dipping top to bottom. This is a nice heavy 80-pound cover weight, so I'm just gonna hold it by the edge. There we go. Now this is gonna dip easily top to bottom, and we wanna repeat that with the yellow. Oh yeah, that definitely, you can feel it wants to go this way, so that's what we're after. And that's indicated by the arrow right on the instruction document. Now, if this is your first time doing a card kit with me, don't be discouraged if it feels like I'm going too fast. I probably am if you're not used to doing a lot of measuring, which we will be doing today. There is a way to slow me down. Just click the gear button on your YouTube playback screen, and then under playback speed, choose like 0.75. That'll slow me down a little bit. Otherwise, press pause as much as you need. Now, both of these at the same time. You don't have to do it that way, but you can. Otherwise, just repeat what we did with the yellow and the green. We'll cut at 9 3/4. Again, if you're new, just make sure your paper's level here at the top. I find the hole number 9 under the inches. Go to the left 3 columns for each quarter. So 9 3/4. Stabilize on this clear bar to hold that paper in place. And then we're going to slide down to 5 1/2. And then rotate. We'll trim the 5 1/2 inch piece at 11 and 7. This is going to end up becoming a card base, believe it or not. So I'm going to set this aside and then take this next pair of rectangles here, and we'll trim them horizontally at 5 1/4 and pop these in pocket B. And then you have this other little strip here, the 1-inch strip. We will trim this also at 5 1/4 and pop that into pocket B. And you did create just a few little scraps there. We're not even going to save any of these. You can put those in the circular file. And then you have this longer strip here. We're going to trim horizontally at 11. And set these aside in the pile to be scored. And this is a scrap that I'll place in pocket D. This other strip, we're going to trim also at 11. This needs to be scored. And once again, we have some little scraps here. We can, I'm going to pitch those. They're pretty small. Next, take the white, check your grain. We want it dipping easily from top to bottom. And the blue. That definitely goes this way. That's what we want. And we're going to repeat all of that. So 9 3/4, 5 1/2. Rotate. 11 and 7. This becomes a card base, needs to be scored. These panels will trim horizontally at 5 1/4. It's gonna make a nice little card panel for pocket B. And then this guy horizontally at 5 1/4. Going into B again. And then you have this 12-inch strip getting trimmed at 11. Set this aside to be scored. The scrap, the wider one, we can save. These little guys can go. One more time. This little strip here will trim at 11. This needs to be scored. And all these little scraps, they can all go bye-bye. Okay, now we're going to move on to the green. This time, we want the paper to dip easily from left to right, this way, scooping down this way. And again, you can see the difference now. The first document, the arrow is this way. Now we got this pointing left to right. And then I want the yellow doing the same thing. There we go. This time we'll trim at 8 1/2. And then rotate the 8 1/2 inch piece. We'll cut at 11. And 5 1/2. We just made 4 card bases all at once. We will set them aside to be scored. This is a bonus scrap if you want to pocket that in D. And then you have this strip here. We'll trim at 9. 6. And 3. Okay, so we have this pair and another pair. Both of these sets need to be scored. Then you have 2 more sets. All of these can be placed in pocket A. We're moving on to the next page. We're going to take this sheet of blue paper. It will not be folded, and therefore the grain direction does not matter. And we'll start out at 11 1/2. It's going to be way over here. Create a pretty narrow piece, and then 8 3/4. 8 3/4. Rotate, and we'll cut at 11 1/2. And 5 3/4. Now on my map of my instructions, this has the word P on it. That means this is going to be used in the project. So I'm just going to have a different pile for that. Then we have this 5 3/4 by 8 3/4 inch piece. We're going to trim at 8 1/2 and 4 1/4. These 2 pieces will also be part of the project. We have a couple of little scraps here we can just either save or file away in the D pocket. And then we have the 2 3/4 by 12 inch strip. Let's trim this at 8 1/4. 5 1/2, 2 3/4. Now you just made 3 squares that should be the same size, and those go into the project pile. And then this can go into the D for, I didn't use it. I did, but I didn't just yet. This is kind of a silly little bonus thing. I added it at the last minute. We can trim this narrow strip at 10 5. Now notice where I'm putting the paper just below the inch mark here, so I can see the line of the inches more readily than I can if it were just up against this upper guide here. Just make sure the paper's straight. So I'm cutting at 10 and 5, and that makes 2 little 5-inch strips. We're going to put those in A, and you've got a little scrap there. Now the print. Let's take one of them. There are 2. We're only going to trim 1, and we'll cut at 10. No worries about the grain direction here because we're not folding this either. So 10, 7.5, and 5. Rotate and trim the 5-inch piece at 11 1/4, 7.5, 3 3/4. These 3 pieces should be the same size, and they're going to go in pocket A. And here we have a spare for pocket D. Then you have 2 more strips that are the same size. You can stack them together neatly and trim horizontally at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. I love this print. 4 pieces now the same size going in pocket B. And you have a little scrap here, 2 little scraps. This last strip, believe it or not, I didn't use, so I'm going to put that in D as well in case I want to do some decorating with it. Now the other print comes into play. We're going to cut here at 9 1/2 and 5 1/2. Now rotate the 5 1/2-inch piece and cut at 8 1/2. This is for the project. Okay. Now this rectangle, we're going to trim at 4 3/4. Pop this into pocket A. And we made a small scrap. This longer piece we'll trim at 11 and 5 1/2. Both of these pieces are used in the project. Now we have, we did have a little scrap there. I'm going to pocket that in D. And finally, this is a 2 1/2 by 12. We'll cut it at 8 and 4. These 3 pieces go in pocket C. All right, now we're moving on to 1 sheet of the black. Make sure it's just 1, and we'll cut at 11, 9, and 7. Rotate the 7-inch piece and we'll cut at 11 1/2. And this is for the project. So that pile is growing. Now I did make a little scrap there. I can pocket that in D. 2 more strips the same size. We're going to trim them horizontally at 10 1/2 and 5 1/4. 5 1/4. These 4 pieces that are the same go in pocket C. We have 2 small rectangles. Those can be scrapped out. If you want to save this long strip, you can. All right, now 1 last piece of black paper. We're going to trim this one at 9 1/4. 5 1/4. And then rotate. We'll trim at 8 and 4. Okay, so now you've got 3 sheets the same size going in pocket A. And then we've got this strip here. We're going to trim at 5 1/4. That goes in pocket A. And believe it or not, this was extra, so I'm just going to put that in D just in case. On this strip, I'm going to trim, this is a 2 3/4 by 12. We're going to make a bunch of squares and a scrap. Let's cut at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. All right, bunch of squares. 4 of them going in pocket B, and 1 little scrap. Throw that one out. Now we're moving on to the Cutaparts, and look for the little hash marks in the corners. Those are your guides to turn this into a perfect 12 by 12. So what I like to do is just line up those little hash marks with the edge of my trimming blade. And you'll get better at this if this is your first time. I'm just going to take off these ends so that my paper is perfect 12 by 12. So now I've made a cut on this side, so now I can see 12 inches. Look to my right, make sure that lines up, and it does. 1 more rotation. This should be at 12 inches also. And you have these little scraps that you can throw away. Now, as we trim this, I want you to have the black elements on the right, and let's find 10 inches here. Leave that lay where it landed, and we'll slide down to 7.5. And finally, 4.25. Rotate. We're going to divide this into equal sections by cutting at 9, 6, and 3. 9, 6, 3. All right, so all 4 of these go in pocket A. Then the next strip has the cracker on the end. So we're going to trim with out on the right at 11, 8.25, 5.5, 2.75. Gather up all of these pieces that are the same, and they're going to go in pocket A. And this little guy, we'll just set him aside. All right, now this strip, it looks a little weird, so please pay attention. We are going to cut at, with the hip hip hooray on the right, 11.5, 9, 6.5, and 4. All right, so this guy goes in pocket C. These 3 odd-looking panels go in the project pile. And the hip hip hooray, I'm not sure where I use that. I'll set that aside. Okay, now we have this set here. We're going to make sure the cupcake is on the right. And this goes at 10, 7.5, 5, and 2.5. So all of these black elements go in pocket C. And I use this also in set C. This element is also in set C. Okay, we have to repeat the removal of the outside perimeter just like we did before. So I'm just gonna fly through that, and you can do the same while you put me on pause. Okay, we're going to begin with these just single words on the right, and just so that you know where we're headed, those words are used as the little inserts for the label holders on our project. Now, one thing that's important to realize is that there is a little tiny scrap on the end here, so I need you to take off 1/4 inch. So we trim at 11.75 to take off 1/4 from this edge. Then 11.25, so 11.25 is going to take off the first strip of labels, and then 10.75 takes off the next strip. Let them lay there and keep going. So now we're going to slide down to 9 and 7.25, 5.25, and 2.75. That was 2.75. Okay, rotate, make sure the word celebrate is on your right. We're going to trim some squares. So 11, 8.25, 5.5, 2.75. I know some of you have that memorized already. I do this a lot. Okay, all of these squares now, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are going to go in pocket B. I think I used the celebrate in B. I'm going to guess B. I got to get those labels properly. Okay, now this next strip here, we have our little cake on the right, and we'll trim at 10, 7.5, 5, and 2.5. Gather up the samesies. And these are used in set B, and I believe I used the cake in there as well. Okay, now we have this strip here. We will cut at 10, 7.5, 5, 2.5. Gather everything up. Okay. All 4 of these sames go in C. And you got this little balloon. I believe I used that in C as well. And let's repeat this now. We're going to go 10 and 5. Hooray, hooray, going in pocket C. There was a scrap balloon there. C also. This one, 10 and 5 again. 10, that's the cupcake falling off the right, and 5. All of this, pocket C. And we have these little guys. Okay, and a scrap. Just remember this long piece of white here is a scrap. And there's also going to be a scrap kind of coming off the end. I probably would trim, they get trimmed the same, but do them one strip at a time. And again, use the bottom, use this line right here that's directly under the inches as your leveling guide, rather than bringing it all the way up here. You can't see the inches very well or very accurately. All right, so let's go back down. We're going to find 10 and a half, 8 3/4, 7, 5 1/4, 3 1/2, 1 3/4. Okay, so we have all of these little possible labels and then a scrap. So I can get rid of that. And then these you can go in a pile by your projects, or make sure you set them aside safely, and then repeat with the other strip, making sure that the word celebrates on the right with the scrap right here. So 10 and a half again, 8 3/4, 7, 5 1/4, 3 1/2, 1 3/4. Okay, now you've got all of these other labels. So lots to choose from. Like if you want to make another card caddy, we will have a different flavor available. Or you can just get like a naked kit and make matching card caddies. And I have a whole row of them. And they have all these different categories covered. So there's a lot of great potential there. And that marks the end of our trimming phase. Pretty much. Keep your trimmer handy. We need it for one other little post-operating task here. And now we need to take care of our scoring pile. So let's see what's going on here. Maybe we'll try to tackle this in the order it landed. I'm turning back to page 1 of my instructions to make sure I know what's going on with all of this. Now, we have a series of 4. It should be yellow and green if you're using this particular kit of paper. We're going to put that horizontally in, so you see the 8 1/2 here, and then score at 4 1/4. These are just your basic single fold cards, all scoring at 4 1/4. These can go in pocket A of your folder if you're using a folder. Otherwise, hopefully you're using piles. Pile A. And then these guys are 3 by 3 1/2, and they need to be scored so that the horizontal side, it's landscape. You see a 3 1/2 here. I want you to score at 3. And there should be 4 of those, 2 green, 2 yellow, scoring all of them at 3. These are going to go in pocket B. Then you've got this long skinny guy. We're going to score him at 5 1/2, and then flip the paper top to bottom or bottom to top, or either way, and then score at 8 1/4. Repeat for the other one, 5 1/2, and then flip 8 1/4, and there should be 2 more strips in there. Find them. The yellow, 5 1/2, 8 1/4, and there should be a green one, 5 1/2, flip, 8 1/4. These will be used in set C. Then you should have a total of 4 that are long and skinny as well, 11 inches long. They get scored the same exact way as the previous thin strips, 5 1/2, flip, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, flip, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, flip, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 8 Okay, these are all going in pocket C with those other strips. Lastly, we have these pretty small pieces. They're only 5.5 by 7. Score them at 4.25. And if you're using the Score Pal Ace, there's going to be a little asterisk on that measurement. 4.25, the most common of all scoring measurements. And all 4 of these go in pocket B. I think that's it for the scoring. So now it's time to assemble a sample of each card style. They're nice and easy this month. I'm going to go ahead and empty pocket A and just sort all the pieces as best you can by size. And then you can take the scored card bases, the largest pieces, and then find the bump of the score line. Make sure it's on the inside of your fold. Make sure your corners are lined up nice and neat. And fold all of your card bases in half. If you want, you can burnish those folds with a bone folder just so the cards stay put. And we're going to make 2 vertical cards that are yellow and 2 horizontal cards that are green. Let's distribute more pieces. We've got a black panel. This is the next largest piece in your stack, going to each card base. And then we have a printed panel. Isn't that fun? Going to each card base. Then we have on the horizontal cards, this is where we're going to use these blue anchoring strips. Oh, and then I realized now that this smaller printed panel can go there. Make sure you have a 5-inch piece here on this one. I totally forgot about that. We have, notice, a wider margin on this one. It's just the way the mathematical process turned out. Okay, then you have some colored panels remaining. So we're going to distribute these opposing colors. So the green cards will get the yellow panels, and the yellow cards will get the green panels. For the sentiments, we've got Happy Candle Blowing, Wish Making, Cake Eating Day. Those both go on the horizontal cards. And then You Are Incredible, Adorable, Lovable, Wonderful, Powerful, Perfectly Beautiful. Just the way you are. I love that. And then the inside is just so sweet. Thinking of you. Mwah. And then Wishing You a Wonderful Birthday goes with these 2. All right, so let's just assemble one of these cards together because all the assembly is the same on all 4 with only small variances. So here we have our card base. Nice, easy step to begin with here is going to be to, actually I'm just gonna nest the print onto the black panel and not put the black panel onto the card quite yet. Let's center that. If you wanted to, you could use a grid ruler to make sure you're level in both directions. And then we have this guy, and I'm going to show you something you can do as an option. Here you can see how Jacqueline designed the frames to just have this little indentation on the corner. So if you happen to have a circle punch, this is not a corner punch. I like to eyeball where the edge of that art is and then pull away a little bit. It's a total feel thing. And I try to give it a margin, about 1/8 of an inch. And even if you're slightly imperfect at it, it still looks wonderful. Now I'm gonna nest this onto the corresponding green panel, centered it, top, left, right, bottom, and repeat that little clipping. So again, find that angle and then pull away. And that just gives it the perfect radius to match what's going on with the artwork. Again, if you just skipped this step, it's not a big deal. But it's just, I thought it was kind of fun tip to show you how you can use your circle punch to make a cute little corner. Next, I'm going to use some foam adhesive circles to add this panel to the card. And the reason I'm adding it now and adding the ribbon after that is this is going to help me determine the spacing for my ribbon placement. I added ribbon to each card in the same style I'm about to show you now. So center this onto the panel, top, left, and right, leaving a larger space at the bottom. Now we have 2 yards of this metallic black ribbon here. So pretty. And if you just stretch it going all the way across and then some, snip and repeat, 2 pieces, both of them extending back beyond the edge of the card. Take one piece. I like to check the grain, make sure the ribbon wants to go in the direction you're looping it, and make a little loop with uneven ends. And then I'm going to try to estimate so that the center of my loop is at the center of the card. Wrap the ends around at the back. They're uneven so they both are exposed to the adhesive I'm using, which in this case is a fancy tape. Check grain direction again. It wants to go this way. Loop, bring this ribbon through the first loop that you made. Support the ribbon where it's secured and then give it a tug. Then wrap these ends around to the back. Make sure you're not pulling too tight. And now you have this knot-free bow. And the knot-free is just nice, like knot, like K-N-O-T. It's just nice for when you want to mail a card, right? So you don't have to worry about lumpiness depending on how strict the post office is. And center this onto the card base. Check out your scrap pile. Maybe there's a piece of paper you want, like this guy. And maybe on your inner sentiment, you can also clip those corners to match. Again, this is just a matter of personal preference. These little things always fly up and land and stay on my shirt. Okay, so I'm going to anchor this down with the blue strip. I'm going to trim this to 5.5. And when you're adding these narrow strips, I actually use a 1/2-inch ATG tape or adhesive transfer gun tape, and it's a little wide for these 1/2-inch pieces. And then if you want to make sure that it's attached level to the card at a certain distance, let's just say I'm going to go a good inch from the edge. I can rest this little glued piece to the edge of the ruler, and then I know it's nice and level. That's why I use my 2x8, my perfect size ruler when you do these little projects. You could also use our tiny, tiny ruler and center that on there, and you got a completed card. How easy was that? Let's take a look at the other ones in this set. So this is the one we made together. You can see it's exactly the same as the original sample. Nothing else has to go into that. And then the horizontal cards are made the same way with one exception, with two exceptions actually. The first is that the anchoring strip is already in the set, and I just used my ruler to make sure it was level. And then before I attached this to the card with foam adhesive, I chose to do the loop in that open area Jack left intentionally for me to wrap the ribbon around. I think that looks really, really sweet with that blue chevron. And then the inside too, we have the anchoring strip as well. So I always try to put a picture of the inside of the card in the instructions if you ever have any doubt or just want to follow exactly what I did. But I typically just grab and adapt a scrap from the deep pocket to anchor these inner sentiments or add a little life or color to the card. And that again was set A. And go ahead and empty pocket B and get all the pieces in that pocket nice and organized. So I have things kind of organized by size here. So as always, we'll start out with these larger card bases. Find the bump of the score line and fold to bury it. And then you can crease those folds with the bone folder to make sure they stay as flat as possible. Let's arrange them in the order that we'll make them. So we're going to start with blue and then green. This flap goes on the left. Then we'll do a white and a yellow. Then we'll have an inner panel. That's that larger piece. Let's go yellow in here, blue in this green one. Let's do green in the white and white in the yellow. Okay, now each one gets a nice printed panel, and that's designed to nest and fit perfectly onto that left flap of the card. And doesn't that just really jazz things up for us, right? Let's see, then every single card is going to get a flap panel. This has already been scored. We're going to go green, yellow, yellow, green. Every single card will get a black square. 1, 2, 3, 4. Every card gets a narrow strip. Let's go white, yellow, just adding more color, right? Blue, and green. Now we have some sentiments and other things. So the smaller sentiments actually go on the outside of the card. We're going to go with the more of the candles, another year, a balanced diet means. So the innies, the more the candles, the bigger the wish. Another year, eat the evidence, and eat the evidence with the other one. And then a balanced diet means a cupcake in both hands. I have some other odds and ends here that I added to the insides of the cards, and we can discover those later. They're shown. Oh, I did misfile a cupcake into a different pocket. Either way, I will label those clearly so that if you follow the distribution map and instructions, you're going to know. If you want to grab this cupcake with the blue wrapper out of pocket C, you can do that. I'm going to stack up card 3 and 2 and 4, all the pieces ready to go, and set that aside. Let's make this one together. There's just one thing, if you miss doing it, you're going to be like, ugh. So take the green panel that's been scored and bury the bump with the score line, as always. And that just makes a little 1/2-inch tab, which we're going to hook onto the right edge of this yellow panel. Flip it over, and then you can just, I mean, if you wanted to, you could run some adhesive underneath it just to hold that in place, and then you can go ahead and adhere the whole thing to the inside of your card base. Easy peasy. If you forget that step, ugh, so annoying. Why do I know this? It has happened to me. Okay. Now this other printed panel here is just going to be adhered then to the front flap, left flap of the card base. Now I could do this, but I'm not going to clip the corners. I showed you how that works. Pretty easy. I'm going to go ahead and nest this outer sentiment onto the black square. And then I think I'll use some foam adhesive circles. All right, so this is going to go on the outside of this flap. And then the corresponding one, the bigger the wish, happy birthday, can go either here, like on this back side of the wing, or it can go on the inside of the card. But before we attach that, one little embellishment option, you can take the strip and just check your grain direction, run the ribbon along it, and a little bit past the length of the paper. Wrap the ends around to the back. Make sure you're not causing that to bow or anything. And we'll just secure those ends with some tape. And then I'll take my ATG. So close the left flap and then place this ribboned paper centered within the remaining opening. Okay, now you can decide, do you want this to be here and then keep that open? I actually did do that, so let's just copy my inspiration here. This will go on the inside. And then you can fussy cut this little piece of cake here. And by fussy cut, I mean, don't spend 20 minutes on it. Just, you know, you can, I would even just like cut the stem off the cherry. No one's gonna know. No one's gonna miss it. Add a little adhesive to the back of the cake. And we'll just attach him into the corner here. And there you have it, your adorable card. Let's take a look at the others in this set. You can see if there's any changes. The one we made together, let's see, that's this one. So you can see it's exactly as we designed it. And then the cute little another year, I used the black ribbon here. So the ribbon color, of course, whatever you wish. This was cute with the chevron. Oh, and this is where I put the celebrate in the middle of this one. And then a balanced diet. This one had the cupcake. So for those inner things, the inside of the cards, that's your decorative prerogative. I just want to make sure you knew what I did with mine. And let's move on to the final set. So now I've taken everything out of the C pocket and I have it organized by size. And the reason we did that little flip when we were scoring these card bases is so that we can make what I call a Z fold. So you can see the bump of the score line here. Make sure the bump is facing up and then fold the card in half. And then fold back. Now you should have a bump facing you again. So fold back on that to make your Z shape. And you can repeat that for all of the cards in the set. You can also do that with the narrow strips as well. They fold the same exact way. So find your bump at the middle, fold it in half, and find the other bump and fold back. And it makes the same shape as all these other cards. So go ahead and do all of that. Then I'll take all of my cards and just give those creases a nice burnish. And do the same with the narrow strips. Here, let's get these pieces distributed. So let's go yellow, and then blue, green, and white. Those will be the card bases. And then for the strips, we'll go blue on this yellow card, green, white, and yellow. Each card will receive one of these printed elements here that fits on that left panel really nicely. Oh, by the way, one of these, I guess the one I used on the green card, I didn't have enough paper of the print appropriately sized to fit this spot, so I allocated it in the Cutaparts. Then we have the narrow black strip here that I'm going to distribute. All right. The yellow card has the "Be careful, my friend, at our age." And then we've been through a lot together, and the last two will be "Hooray, hooray." Okay, so the inner sentiments now are these black components here. So "Be careful, my friend, at our age. Hip, hip, hooray" can turn into "Hip, hip, replacement." We've been through a lot together, and most of it was your fault. Happy birthday. Hooray. Whoa, this is a big deal. High five. So what I love about this sentiment is it literally can be used for anything. A wedding, a baby announcement, a baby birth, an engagement, a promotion, doesn't matter. And then so that repeats. So it's so useful. We needed two of those. Now we've got these other little elements. Let's see. I think I used the cracker on this one and the cupcake on this blue one, and then the balloons on the other two. So there's just like a little fussy cut element on each of these cards. And as always, they all get assembled the same way. So let's make this fun bright yellow one together. I'm just going to take 1 second, and I'm ignoring those little strings on the cracker, and I'm just going to fussy cut this. All right, let's start by grabbing some of this green ribbon here, and I'm just going to cut a small piece. In fact, I'm going to cut that in a trapezoid shape. So 2 angles going toward each other. Check your grain, see which way it wants to go. I'm going to fold it in half like this. And I'm going to find my black panel. And I will tape this folded piece of ribbon to the black panel like that. Then we can take our long, narrow cut apart panel that says "Be careful, my friend," and nest it. So you're making your ribbon sandwich. Again, it's lump free for perfect mailing opportunities. And then this can nest onto the prepared Z-fold strip. Now what you want to make sure of is that it's the long arrow is the long scored area is facing up. Then you have a score line, and then 2 other additional areas coming to the right of it. So this goes on. Just make sure it's not, facing the wrong way or on the back side or anything. Okay. Then these other remaining scored areas get the other 2 sentiments, or the other blocks, I guess, to finish the sentiment. Hip, hip, hooray can turn into hip, hip, replacement. I have several people that gets on this card too. And then we can adhere the printed panel to the outside of the card flap. So again, the orientation should be that the flap is on the left and that the first line is a mountain fold of a score. Okay. Next, take your prepared strip and make sure it's kind of in a closed position and flip it over. All I need to do is apply adhesive to the areas you can see when it's flat. Okay, don't put any adhesive in this area or you won't be able to open this card. If you want, you can grab your ruler just to make sure that this is applied level. So all I'm doing really is making sure that the ruler has a line that's lined up with the bottom edge of the card. Ta-da! Look how that worked. Isn't that fun? Now, with this little cracker guy, what I did was took some waxed thread. We do have this available at Club Scrap in different colors. You might have some baker's twine or some divine twine, as it's been called. Just anything from your stash. If I had really been thinking ahead, I would have just included it, but I didn't know I was going to do this. So I tied this onto the cracker and left a tail. Okay. And then I attached it with some of our foam adhesive. Just make sure it doesn't land in the crease, but this can go wherever. Isn't that just the cutest? And I like how it rolls with the cracker that's over here on the left. It all coordinates and looks pretty fun. Okay, let's look at the others in this set, and we can finally get on to making our awesome card caddy. So here we've been through a lot together. Most of it was your fault. There's that little cupcake. I just didn't even use foam adhesive. I just attached him. It's pretty cute. Here's the Hooray with the balloon. You can see here I just taped the thread to the back of that little tiny tip of the balloon. It's so sweet. Here's the other one, the green balloon, and the one that we made together. So incredibly sweet. I hope you love these card structures and that you'll make them again and again. Remember, this is a roadmap basically to making more cards. So if you followed all that same trimming instructions, you'd have the pieces you would need to make another card caddy, and then yeah, you'd have another whole set of 12 cards as well. All you need is 11 sheets of coordinating 12 by 12 paper. Now we have all the rest of these pieces, and this is what we're going to use to make our project. So let's start the assembly process for the card caddy. We have the largest piece of black paper, and this is going to end up wrapping the board. And this is why I went ahead and included one of our awesome foam brushes. I'm going to protect my work surface with our graph paper desk blotter, and I've got a bottle of our bookbinding glue ready to go here. And I need to apply a nice even coat of glue to the entire board that we've given you. So I'm going to just squirt out some of this glue right from the bottle, not using our needle tip applicator today. The board is a little thirsty, and you'll kind of get the feel for it as you work. Notice I'm holding the board off of my work surface. With my hand, it's pretty easy to hold. It's not too wide. I'll take my foam brush and just brush outward to the edges in long sweeping strokes. Don't make a painting motion, going small with it, go broad with it for the best results. Hang on tight. And just make sure the whole surface has a nice shiny coat of glue. If it becomes like a matte finish or you can't even see it at all, just apply more glue. There we go. That seems like a pretty good coat. You see how it's covered? Then just turn it over and eyeball it into the center of this paper. Okay, if you want, you can flip it over and just burnish this to the edge. Now, the fact that we don't have glue everywhere is that I held that board up while I was applying the glue, just as a little tip. Now, I do need to remove some of the paper from each corner, but not too much. Be really, really careful. So I'm gonna cut at a 90-degree-ish angle toward the corner, but not to the corner. I'm leaving a good 1/8 of an inch there. Now, if you really want to get technical, our rulers are 1/8 of an inch thick. So just as a guide, if I take a pencil and I hold the ruler up on its side, you can actually mark, and that thickness, that's 1/8 of an inch from the tip of the corner to the pencil line. And I've just cut on the outside of that. I'm guaranteed to have enough paper. But when you make a lot of these, you can eyeball it, okay? So whatever you're comfortable with. Do not cut to the corner. If you do, bummer. And you'll know why in a minute. Okay, so now I need to prepare these flaps to wrap themselves around the board. So I'm gonna turn them up and around. Notice I'm not gluing anything. If you wanted to, you could use a bone folder to make sure that paper is nudged up nicely against the board. Here's another nice technique. If you just push down on the project, go underneath it with your bone folder, and you're making a crease basically to turn that paper up to 90 degrees. Then grab that paper and make another crease to wrap it around the board. And you have the nice crisp edges here on this mat board. This is a nice, really thick, sturdy base for your project. So under, around, and over. Now usually I start out by adhering the long flaps first, and I'm going to add some adhesive, our bookbinding glue, to the middle of the flap. Avoid the corners. You don't want glue pooling in the corners. And just spread it. Now take note of the fact that my hand is holding this up off of the desk. You don't want to put it on and get glue all over this and then your project. So now I'm gonna, this flap already knows where to go, but the paper is nice and soft from the glue being applied, and it sticks immediately. You can add a little bit more if you want. You just have some glue in the tip of your brush as well that's accumulating there. Going all the way to the edge of that flap. The skill you're learning right now, if you've never wrapped a board like this, can help you make numerous projects, books, albums. This is just a great tip. Now, you have to deal with all the excess paper here at each corner. And the way to do that is just to shove in that paper against the edge of the end wall here. Just kind of bring it in. Turn in that corner. I hope you can see that. Now, if I do a test run, when I wrap this, do you see how beautiful that corner looks? It's like a total professional job. I'm gonna just prepare. You could also use the tip of your bone folder to turn them in. So turn that in. And then this has already been prepared. Test drive it, and it looks beautiful. So all I need to do is just add a little glue. Notice how little I'm adding here. Again, there's a little bit of glue in my brush. If you want to use the brush for another project or another Card Caddy, for example, rinse it right away before that glue dries. Once the glue dries, I think, you know, it's destined for the circular file. So just rinse it out right away if you want to recycle. I use a lot fewer brushes now that I've been using the needle tip applicator for many projects. But when I need a nice, thorough, full application of glue, that's when I use the brush. Make sure everything's tucked in. And now I have the top of my Card Caddy. The reason this is the top is because we want the base fully wrapped. Any visible part will be wrapped. And then when we bring in our die cuts, that'll sit on top of the base and cover the remaining exposed mat board. Now let's take a look at these die cuts. These have been scored, and just like the score lines you make, the scores have an indentation and a bump. So we want to make sure that we fold on all of the score lines by burying the raised score. So bury the bump of each of these. And aren't you glad I didn't have you do all the trimming to make these? We did that for you. How handy is that? Now here on the end is this little tab, and we need to glue this to the tab to form our little shape, okay? So the way to do this is lay this so that the tab is facing up. And in this case, you can use your needle tip applicator if you would like. And I'm gonna put glue on the whole perimeter of the tab. If you wanted to use the brush, you could. And then I'm gonna bring this to the tab. Leave the tab down on your work surface, bring this to the tab, and line it up. Double check everything's fitting properly. Looks really good. And then you can repeat this for the other two pieces. Again, it's really helpful if you pre-fold on every single score line before you glue down that tab. For the next step, you need to glue in these 4 flaps at the bottom. Now I've studied this a little bit, and my desire is for the front of the unit to look as fabulous as possible. And then of course the sides get second priority. So what I like to do is end by bringing in the front flap last. So that means I want to do the left long flap, the right long flap, and then the back and the front to give me the best look for the right cabinet, okay? So all that means is I'm gonna put some glue on this panel here and bring this one in. And remember, I wanted the front to go last. So I'll just apply glue to each of these flaps. Needle tip applicator works great for this. Makes quick work of it. And I'm gonna bring in the back flap and end with the front. Try to make sure, since I want this to be the cabinet on the far right, I just wanna make sure it looks really good from this edge, and then you can just burnish everything down from the inside. Now, for the next one, doesn't matter, this one's gonna be in the center. So again, I'll bring in one long tab and add my adhesive. Bring this one on top. And then I can finish with my back and front flaps. I was just ending with the front flap. Burnish from the inside again. That's my center one, and now my left one. This is the front. So I'm gonna bring the right flap in first, so that just so I can have the neatest possible edge. I'll apply my adhesive to this. You can see how particular I am about that. Bring that down on top from the left. This is the front, just remember. Again, that's just very, very fine detail. You don't have to be that detailed about it. This goes in next. This is from the back, and this is from the front. Now we need to connect them together. So this is not hard either. And once again, I'm coming in with my needle tip applicator for accurate glue application. You could smooth this with a brush if you want to. Again, I've included it, so be my guest. But I'm just gonna pull these together. And the advantage here to using a wet glue is that you can adjust this. You just have a few seconds to make any adjustments if you need to, but otherwise, once that starts to cure, you are committed. Make sure you're getting it nice and connected at the front. And here I'm gonna apply the glue once again to the perimeter and connect. Make your adjustments right away. There I have my 3-box unit, looking fabulous. Okay, so next, maybe what we could do is add our button feet. And it's totally up to you if you want to leave these in their natural wood state, or if you'd like to paint them. You could use some black acrylic paint and paint the feet. I'm going to attach them to the outside corners. And I think, was it necessary to do this step? No, but is it amping up the project and kicking it up a notch? Yes. So for this kind of easy step like this, how fun is that? Having a little riser on your, not just 4, but we went for the 6. I suppose now we should just let this dry for a second before we tip it back over. It doesn't take long, as you can see. Okay, at this point, if you would like, you can use glue from the bottle for this much surface area, and we want to get a good bond here with the base. So I'm going to go ahead and use this and grab that handy brush I included and make sure this gets really well distributed on the bottom of this whole unit here. Okay. So now I'm just going to bird's eye view this and center it. We got quite a lip on all the sides here. The board itself is 9 5/8 long to accommodate for the expansion that happens, so that the lip is equal on all sides. So a lot of thought went into this little project. I'll burnish the bottom here to the base so it stays forever. Now, as you know, mine is pretty decorated, and we're going to do that part of it. So check this out. You're going to love this. Here we have our larger pieces, and I'm going to use my ATG. You could use your glue, of course, to nest this. So the pattern will be nested onto the blue plane, or whatever color you've substituted with. And then I can, once again, I'm doing a pretty thorough perimeter application on this because it is going to be on the outside of a project. And now I can add this to the outside of the unit. Let's place a blue panel vertically on our work surface. Grab your grid ruler, and I want you to measure up 2 7/8 from the bottom edge on the lower right corner. So 3 inches is here. 2 7/8 is 1 cube before that. That's 2 7/8. Okay, let's do it on one blue piece. Now take the white printed panels and put them face to face. I'm going to measure up 2 3/4 from the bottom of this one. So again, that's 2 3/4, which is basically 1 cube lower than your previous measurement. Next, take your trimmer, and again, it's really important that these two are facing each other. Trim from the upper left corner down to the mark that you made. So there's the corner of my paper. Pencil mark is here. I'm going to repeat that with the blue pieces. Top left corner to the pencil mark. If you just kind of secure it at one end and then pivot the other. Okay, so now I can get rid of my trimmer. And now you can nest these together. So I'll take my ATG once again and do a nice perimeter application. Once again, you can use your glue, whatever works. And that should really nest nicely on there. So once again, if I just perimeter apply adhesive to this, I should be able to put it on the left wall of my box. Oh, that looks so nice, doesn't it? It makes me really happy. We will have this box in a different die cut color in the less exciting shade of brown. I thought this yellow was just so cheerful and fun for this theme though. Oh, adorable. Okay, front now. So we have these handy little squares, 3 of them, and then 3 other little squares as well. This is where the label holders come in. And Jacqueline and I spent a fair amount of time planning out how this would work. And you can see the planning has paid off. So I'm going to take this piece here, and if you remember earlier too, if you haven't watched the whole card assembly, if you would like, you can just clip these corners just to add a little something something to this. And we're also going to position the label so that the opening is facing the top and centered within this area here. It should be perfect. Take any kind of a paper piercing tool and pierce. We've provided the mini brads right in your kit so that you can nest that and open the prongs here. So go through your little pierced hole. Pre-piercing a hole really works nice if you're using the brads. I'm doing this on the single unit of paper before I nest it onto the blue so that the prongs of the brads are definitely sandwiched nicely between 2 layers of paper. At this point, you can go ahead and do the matching clip on the corner. And then this can be attached to the front wall of your box. So obviously you'll repeat that for the remaining 2 pieces. Okay, with all of these pieces attached, I can decide if there's a certain order I want them to be in, and then add your adhesive. I've kind of carved out those corners on the bottom of each piece, which just kind of adds a little something special. And since these are 3 by 3 and your little pieces are 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, you should be able to just center that perfectly into the space. Now I have one last thing you can do if you would like, is to choose from all of your different categories. So if you just want to keep it all positive and go like, thank you, his birthday, her birthday, or youth birthday, you know, whatever you want. Anniversary, these are designed to fit in here. Now, one of the things is there probably won't be a seal across the bottom. So once you insert your favorite category, it'll go down in there, but it could fall through. So I do recommend maybe just putting a little dollop of adhesive on these so that they don't fall out the bottom of your label holder. But it just, I think it really gives it a nice classy appearance to have the label holders on there, and you know, you can quickly find your cards. So again, all your cards and your envelopes can all go in here. All of your cards are going to be ready to send at a moment's notice. So this has been the Hooray Card Kit Workshop. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're not already a member of our card club, please join us. We're going to do cards together every month. It won't always be a project like this, but sometimes we just have this little extra. So I hope you had fun, and I'll see you again next month.